Let's get back to the cost of living debate and the economy. Inflation, of course, is on the way back up, jumping to 4% yesterday, and it's only going to get worse with the government's cost of living measures, tax cuts and power bill rebates kicking in next week. But according to the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, it's all sunshine and rainbows. Here he is in Question Time today.
The monthly inflation data that we got yesterday is a timely reminder of why it is so important that we provide this substantial but responsible cost of living relief. It's also why it's so important, as the Prime Minister said a moment ago, that we have turned two big Liberal deficits into two Labor surpluses. And as the Governor of the Reserve Bank has said, that is helping in the fight against inflation.
Look, he either doesn't get it or he's playing dumb. Let me bring in University of New South Wales Economics Professor Gigi Foster again. Gigi, thanks for joining us. I wanted to get you back because you were predicting all this. You've said that this government's heading down an inflationary path. Chalmers seems to think that just because he's clocking up a surplus, then he's not spending too much, no matter how much extra spending he's put in there. Surely these interest rates, the inflation rate yesterday vindicates what you were suggesting. Do you fear that it's only going to get worse?
I do, unfortunately, Chris, and I don't like to say that, but I do think it's much more likely we'll now have another hike before the end of the year than it is that we'll certainly have a decline in rates, which some people were predicting at the beginning of the year. And I think it could be even worse than the numbers are showing, because as we know, CPI only measures certain things. It only has a particular basket. It doesn't adjust for things like shrinkflation. It doesn't include certain kinds of expenditure items, interest payments, some kinds of insurance, all sorts of things like this. And what we're finding in other countries, particularly in the US that I follow, is that some of the official statistics have gotten a bit wonky recently because things have been so changing. They've been so disrupted, and it's kind of hard for the national statistical agencies to keep up. So I'm not even sure that we should trust the CPI as a really reliable measure of inflation. And it certainly doesn't reflect every household's experience either, because as we know, we've had increasing inequality. Some households will really be feeling the pinch a lot more. So yeah, I do think it's going to get worse, and I think Michelle Bullock really has a tough task on her hands.
Does she have any other option, really? We know they looked at increasing interest rates last time around. With these inflation figures, surely she's in a situation where she can't afford not to act.
Pretty much. And if you look at the employment data as well, which is another big indicator of whether the economy is running hot and needs to cool down, pretty much every formal indicator is looking very, very healthy, quote unquote. In other words, the labor force participation rate is high, unemployment is low, employment to population looks very, healthy. So it's just very difficult to see weakness in the economy, which is what she'll need to be able to point to if she's actually not going to raise rates.
Well, the other big question, and there's divided opinion on this, I'm keen to get your insights, and that is these energy rebates that are going out next week. Jim Chalmers and Anthony Albanese say these will be anti-inflationary because the money's going to the energy companies, so therefore, apart from giving relief to households, they actually nominally lower the cost of electricity. But the other argument is this will free up money for households who are feeling it tough and therefore will spend that extra money, therefore fueling inflation. Which of those two scenarios is likely to play out?
Well, I actually think that there are other options other than the energy rebate that could be considered that directly reduce pressure on households without being as inflationary, because it doesn't circulate money right back into the economy. Like, how about the fuel tax rebate? That would be an idea, because that's just taking money away from the government, right? And we know we need a smaller government, right? The government has totally overreached its remit, and that's one of the major causes of this continued and unfortunately, I think, somewhat entrenched now inflation that we've been seeing. And that's another thing that Michelle Bullock is worried about, is that we are all adjusting our expectations to a higher than 3% inflation rate. That's really bad.
Yeah, fuel rebate cuts would be a very, very direct, quick and easy way, as you say, to transfer money from government to people who really need the cash. Thanks for joining us, Gigi. Appreciate it.